So, Eliza, give us a little bit of a sense of just sort of the genesis of this so-called election integrity commission. Where did this start with Kobach? And maybe it's best even to start with who is Kris Kobach?
Well, Kris Kobach is the Kansas Secretary of State. He did not create the commission. The commission was created by Donald Trump via executive order back in May, and it grew out of his conviction that the popular vote had been stolen from him and his unsubstantiated statement that 3 to 5 million people had voted illegally in the last election. Kobach is actually the vice chair of the commission. The chair is technically Vice President Mike Pence, but Kobach is widely perceived as the commission's head. And he has quite a reputation in Kansas for attempting to cull the voter rolls of perceived illegal voters. He's subject to a number of lawsuits in Kansas on that score.
Now, do you think that this is that this commission was set up specifically to address Donald Trump's fantasies that he did not lose the popular vote, or do you think, and if you haven't reported this out and there's really no way to know, I'll take that as an answer, but do you think that it's Kris Kobach, who's involved in the transition, right? He was seen famously with a document in his hand. He's also equally jazzed up about illegal immigration, in his words, and this is a guy who has been a longtime disenfranchiser of voters. How much of this was just sort of a broad idea that Kris Kobach had, and it was a suggestion to Donald Trump? Two birds with one stone, as it were.
Well, I can't really comment on whether Donald Trump was responding to Kris Kobach, although it's clear that Kris Kobach had proposed to Trump that we should alter the way voter registration records are handled through the Motor Voter Act. But it's clear that the commission is stacked with conservatives who are convinced that there's voter fraud in the U.S., a statement that has never been substantiated by objective studies. So we have Kris Kobach, we have Hans von Spakovsky, we have a number of other conservative proponents of voter fraud theories that have been debunked by experts. So the composition of the commission, which is headed by two Republicans, and which is dominated by Republicans, has raised a lot of questions in the minds of civil and voting rights advocates as to what the commission's actual intent is.
Let's remind people who Hans von Spakovsky is. I can barely pronounce his name. I had that problem a decade ago when he was in the Bush administration as well. But remind people who he is, because I mean, the thing that I think people should understand about this committee is that it really is. I mean, this is one of those areas, it strikes me, that is both a function of Donald Trump's fevered swamp brain, as it were, and a long-standing agenda that has existed in the Republican Party, and that this commission is really the natural progression of where they've been, because von Spakovsky was caught up in the firing of the U.S. attorneys to a certain extent, wasn't he, back in the Bush years?
Yes, he served in the Civil Rights Division, and he was not only in the administration, but went on to serve as a scholar at the Heritage Foundation, and has authored a number of papers about voter ID, about voter fraud, which have literally been the basis for a number of state laws and Supreme Court rulings. Back when Illinois first passed a voter ID law and it was upheld by the Supreme Court, some of von Spakovsky's research and analysis was the basis for that ruling. So, there's a sense in which he's sort of the architect of modern voter ID laws in the United States.
And you mentioned that there are other sort of long-time vote suppressors on there. I mean, this is ranging from, I think there's a guy, Adams, on that committee, who was the principal driver behind the notion that that the new Black Panther Party was intimidating voters throughout, I guess, greater Philadelphia area, and this became a national story. And there's others too, right? I mean, that have made this their life's calling. That is to call the voting rolls.
Yeah, I mean, they have been referred to as the four horsemen of voter fraud, the fraudulent fraud squad. They're really notorious within the civil and voting rights community for their positions. And this is emblematic of something that's happened in other areas of the Trump administration, whereby people who had been perceived as being very much on the fringe and very much in the extreme and not, frankly, taken seriously in the scholarly world now hold positions of tremendous power. This is not a federal agency, but it is nevertheless a presidential commission. It should be noted that the commission can only make recommendations. It cannot enact laws. It cannot change executive rules. But, to the extent that it has the ear of the president, there is a fair amount that he can do through executive action that would be potentially damaging to voters in the United States.
I want to get to what exactly the president could do, and also what the committee can do beyond its recommendations, right? I mean, we already saw its attempt to create a database. And we should also mention, I just feel like, because these feel like ghosts that have come back to haunt us again, but Ken Blackwell, the former Secretary of State of Ohio, remind people who he was. The idea that he would be on a voting integrity commission is, I mean, your piece is, Kobach's Looking Glass Commission. We're through the looking glass.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. I mean, as I said in my story, the first meeting of the commission was sort of surreal because, on the one hand, the members of the commission complained that voters don't have faith in the American election system, and then the president came in and, having welcomed them, made some of his most disparaging comments to date about the things that had gone wrong and all the fraudulent votes that had been cast. So there are a lot of ironies here, and one of them is that one of the commission's goals really should be to secure elections from hacking. As we saw, recent disclosures show that Russians attempted to hack into as many as 21 state election databases in the last election, and this is something that's really concerned state election officials. But by attempting to create a central repository of voter information, Kobach would really make the United States a lot more vulnerable to hacking, because what saved us in the last election was the fact that we have a decentralized system. We have all these state and local systems being run by officials with different databases all over the country. So that, there's no evidence, in fact, that the Russians were at all successful in altering voter registration databases. But if Kobach creates this central repository of voter information, that actually makes us more vulnerable. So, the commission would therefore be accomplishing the opposite of what its stated goal is.
All right, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, let's talk about that central database. I mean, it's unclear whether they're going to actually be able to create the database they were looking to create. We had 44, I believe, at last count. It could be a few more. Secretaries of State rejected the request from the Kobach committee. Some may have already delivered it. I've seen reports. But nevertheless, the question remains, why did Kris Kobach want this information? What is the game plan for this commission? And then, like you mentioned, what can the president do based upon these recommendations? We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Eliza Carney. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio.